Okay, this set of notes deals with the chapter in your book dealing with the Roman Republic and the Roman Empire. It's broken up into 4 sections, just like all the other lecture notes throughout the course. Part 1 deals with the establishment of Rome and the Roman Republic. So, legend says that Rome, or the founding of Rome, was because of 2 brothers, Romulus and Remus, who were abandoned or orphaned at a very young age, and according to legend was raised by a she-wolf. And Romulus founded the city in 753 BCE. However, archaeologists know that people have been in this area of Italy since 2000 BC. They found bronze weapons and iron weapons, and so they know that people have been in this area for quite some time, but the founding of Rome itself wasn't until 753. So people in this area before the Romans took over were known as the Etruscans. They think because of little that we do know about them, because they're still kind of a mystery to archaeologists, is that we think that they came from an area known as Anatolia, which is in roughly modern-day Turkey today. And based on a little bit of reading and writing languages and other archaeological stuff that we found about them. And they colonized this area. But by the 6th BCE, they were starting to get attacked more and more by the Greeks, because they were expanding, and Celtic people from the north. So the Kingdom of Rome was first a monarchy, but after a while that didn't last very long. But while it was a monarchy, the monarchy and the government of the monarchy built streets and temples and public buildings and became a major center of trade in this region. And that's one of the reasons, again, why geography is so important throughout history. So what about the establishment of the Republic? Well, in 509 BCE, the Romans that lived with the Etruscans basically overthrew the king. The Romans built the Forum. That's kind of the heart of Rome. And we'll talk more about that later. And they set up a constitutional government, a republican constitutional government, in which they had 2 consuls and a senate. But both these groups were part of the aristocrats, which is going to become a problem. So you have social conflicts. You have the aristocrats, known as the patricians. You have the commoners, known as the plebeians. And they're going to continue to have major class conflict all the way throughout this time period. The plebeians are going to insist, primarily because of their population, that they elect some people to represent them. And the patricians, grudgingly probably, give in, and these people are called tribunes. And so as the years go on, the plebeians are going to insist that they gain more and more rights and expand their rights through this time period. However, during times of civil or military conflict, they did elect people that were more or less dictators that basically took over the government during times of these conflicts. But basically they served as dictators while the conflict was going on. And so when the conflict was over, they pretty much went back to their regular lives or went back into the Senate or whatever. So it wasn't a continuous dictatorship as we'll see like in the empire. The expansion of the empire, again, they kick off the Etruscans. They take over the iron industry that had developed during this time period. And they start to expand by military threats and incentives. So the way it kind of work is that the Romans would see an area in Italy that they want to take over, and they'd kind of roll up on the city, and they'd say, look, you got pretty much two options. We can come in and basically take everything over and kill everybody, or we can give you some incentives to join us, like tax breaks or trade privileges or even citizenship to Rome itself. And most people wisely took the incentives over a military threat. And so this is kind of how the Romans were able to take over more and more territory in modern-day Italy during this time period. But there was some groups that resisted, and one of those groups was a city-state by the name of Carthage. Now, Carthage is on the other side of the Mediterranean. They're on the northern coast of Africa. And for roughly 100 years, from 264 to 164, the Romans and the Carthaginians battled it out. And sometimes the Carthaginians won, sometimes the Romans won. But it was mostly over trade routes and who was going to get Sicilian grain. And grain's going to feed, pun intended, all of these empire growth during the course of history. And so after the Punic Wars, the Romans dominate the Mediterranean pretty much from here on out until we see the fall of the Roman Empire several years later. Let's just put it that way. But that doesn't mean that everything's great during this time period. You still have imperial expansion problems. You still have domestic problems. You have land distribution problems where, in most societies that we'll see, the rich get richer and the poor get poorer. That's no different in this society. And so you have the introduction of large landholders and land operations called latifundia, excuse me. Sorry, excuse me for butchering that. But, and of course, they're basically going to leverage their size to force out small landholders during this time period. So here's a map of what the Roman Republic looks like, roughly in 146 BCE. As you can see, they've taken over all of Italy, most of the Greek civilization, a little bit of northern Africa, and almost all of Iberia, which would be Portugal and Spain during this time period. And because of that, they control most of the trade going in and out and around the Mediterranean Sea. Now, there are some people that would like to reform what's going on in the Roman Republic. These two brothers, the Gracchi brothers, Tiberius and Gaius, attempt to limit landholders of aristocrats. But the aristocrats aren't going to have anything to do with them, and they are eventually assassinated. And during this time period, you also have these big, huge landholders that are starting to build up private armies. And these private armies are made up of those small landholders that lost their land to these big, huge groups. And you basically have kind of two groups going on here. One led by Gaius Marius, and the other one by Lucius Sulia. Okay, and these two groups are kind of battle it out for supremacy of the Roman Republic. So what you have is a civil war that happened in 87 BCE. Gaius Marius takes over Rome, and then approximately 4 years later, Lucius comes in and takes it back. And during this time period, you've got a lot of people getting killed because they're either allied with one group or the other, and you have this big, huge reign of terror basically befall Rome and the Roman Republic as a whole. because you're either on one side or the other side, and when one guy takes over, you have a chance of being killed, or if the other guy takes over, then you could be killed. So it's a very stressful time within the Roman Republic itself. So that ends part 1 of our set of lecture notes. We'll continue with part 2, which will talk about the Roman Empire. Thanks for listening.